is very small and it can happen a lot quicker. And what I mean by the game making changes in the game with 20 people, I'm sure it takes a lot longer to roll out the new patches and make bug fixes and changes. But that perspective hit me really hard, and I think that's what's also made me so successful in my mixed martial arts career is that there was only literally one cook in the kitchen with me, one coach,
And
and it was
so,
Matt Hume. And then, we obviously had Brad Kurtzen, which was one of the other cooks. And that was it. It was Matt Hume and Brad Kurtzen. And then, I had other trainers prior to that. But in my later stage of my career,
Volio
in
sam
the
se ko
UFC
tigar.
and one championship,
To rekao
there
Niko.
was one sole provider,
treba.
one sole cook, where you go to these guys where they have, this is my jiu-jitsu coach, this is my mixed martial arts coach, this is my boxing coach, this is my striking coach, this is my dietitian, this is my strength and conditioning coach.
Da smo
There's
sada
so
videli da
many
imamo.
cooks in the kitchen working with one athlete. So when I felt like I kind of related that analogy to me,
Pričao
what
s
said
Max.
about that AAA game to a small indie development.
Gdje da
Game.
pokrenemo?
I really like that when he said that. Also, I
Slušaj,
wanted
mi-
to do this because when I do these podcasts, yes, I talk about my passion, which is mixed martial arts, but
No,
I
nisam
also
defan.
like to talk about
No
my
šta te boli
main
briga,
passion
pozvao
that
te
got me
ponovo.
started in creating content, which is gaming.
Idemo uzimati
And I wanted to
fragmente,
have somebody
tražiti
who's
one
been
đavla.
in the gaming space for a very long time. He's always played different games: Elden Ring, Dark Souls,
Hmm.
Vampire Survivor, Helldivers, World of Warcraft, Classic, all of the above. And I wish I could have talked to him more, ask him what do you think about Nintendo 64, Super
I did.
Nintendo, Legend of Zelda, etc., etc. The list just goes on, because I feel like I can connect with more people who play games than I can who do mixed martial arts. So if you guys enjoyed this episode of the Mighty Cast, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try to get more of my favorite content creators on here, because I don't want to just keep on talking to other athletes. Even though I do enjoy talking to athletes, I also enjoy expanding and stepping out the box and talking
Znali
to
ko farma tu
people
da
who
šta.
also share the same passion I do, which is gaming.
A, tebi fali toga svega. Idemo.
Metaka, metaka.
Ma uzmi metaka.
Why Jeff Kaplan left Blizzard. Oh boy. I remember when he left the company, I was like kind of surprised. I really was. Like, I didn't know what to think. Yeah. Like, this is weird as hell. It kind of caught me by surprise. I don't know if it was you guys too. That's how I felt.
And die.
Did an interview? Yeah, apparently. A lot of
What
people talk-
eventually used to be like in 2016. What eventually broke me was it used to be like in 2016 and 2017. I felt very in control of the Overwatch team, the direction of the game, as the game director, working with Greg Resco as the production director. It felt like we were running Overwatch. And we were very, very successful and doing a good job. And I think the fans were happy. And then as we transitioned, Overwatch
Mm.
with the best intention. My parents always say the road to hell is paved with good
This is what I
intention.
saw before. Yeah, this is Overwatch League was so stupid. Basing it off of fucking teams in like cities thing. I don't know why they did that.
That was the Overwatch League, and it
So
ended up
silly.
being an albatross. And then Overwatch 2 was the same thing. And what it boiled down for me, like what sort of ultimately broke me in my Blizzard career, was I got called in the CFO's office, and he sits me down and he says, he gives me a date.
Overwatch is
Time is 2020,
It's the whole thing.
and was going to slip to 2021, but at the time it was 2020.
Yeah.
And he said, Overwatch has to make. And then
$1
every
million,
year
$100 million.
after that, it needs a recurring revenue. And then he says to me,
Jesus.
if it doesn't do dollars, we're gonna lay off 1,000 people, and that's gonna be on you.
Putting it on his head. Like, you are responsible for 1,000. If you don't do this the right way, if you don't make the game this way, 1,000 people get fired. Holy shit. Can you imagine that?
And that was just the biggest fuck you moment I had in my career. It felt surreal to be in that
Hi, Fo.
condition. And
Yeah.
as somebody who's
Follow, Jack.
worked on a lot of games, made a lot of
Chum.
games, you get in these meetings where they're like,
Yeah.
Fortnite has
Bog te
1,400
mazlo
people working on
Everybody wants to be
it. If
Fortnite.
you just hire
Of course.
1,400 people
course.
and make it free to play, we'll make that money. And that was, I had believed I would never work anyplace but Blizzard. I loved it. It was part of who I was.
It felt so weird when Jeff Kaplan left Blizzard. It really did. Like, it kind of came out of nowhere.
And I felt I was a part of it. And I literally thought I would retire from the place. I never thought
Yeah.
the day would come. And that was it. I was like,
You just quit after that?
We're done here. Luckily for Blizzard, that CFO is no longer there.
I mean, Blizzard is one of the greatest companies in the history of Earth. They've created so many incredible video games.
They were,
It's
yeah.
so difficult
Yeah.
That's true.
to create so many hits, and they were done not
Sve vam po...
by chasing
Huh?
money.
Jesi sve vam...
Ma sve.
Small,
Češ
incredible
tamo?
teams.
Aha. Idem ja vamo u ovu
hodgepodge,
kuću.
pride, taking big risks and falling in love with the thing they do, and then just chasing it, working extremely hard, and just because you figured out a way how to make a lot of money doesn't
Bog te
mean
mazo.
it's not at the core this incredible creative journey. It's incredibly difficult to pull off, and just because you got a bunch of really smart, creative people who have somehow figured out how to pull it off multiple times doesn't mean you can treat it like a every single time.
That's the problem, is that they get people in there in the finances especially that don't really have any respect for the creative process, and they don't really care about any of that. They just want to make as much money as possible. And, you get somebody like Bobby Kotick running the company. That's very clearly what happened. And also, Bobby Kotick was successful in that. Like, he made the stock number go up a lot, right? It's not like he wasn't successful.
It's this beautiful journey
Yeah.
of a hodgepodge of weirdos working together. Weirdos have to run that thing. If you ever have a chance to create something special, you have to have weirdos at the helm.
True.
And the degree to which you don't have weirdos at the helm,
Idemo, samo kolji.
creative minds at the helm,
Koljivo da vri.
and you're a business person at the helm, get out of their way. Right? You can't.
Yeah, this is like the Steve Jobs thing about how the people that usually get promoted regularly, like with more frequency, are not product people, but they're
Zašto
sales
si mene
people.
ostavio
Because,
unutra?
like, products have a ceiling, but sales doesn't in the same way.
You cannot
It's
have
true.
the meetings like you're describing. And I don't just speak about this particular company. It's just the entire
Just in
industry.
general.
There's so much joy to be had if you keep creating great games. And I just hope we get to see that.
Not gonna happen.
I think there's a
Not gonna happen
message
with a
to
company like that.
creative people out there,
It's
and
impossible.
people who make stuff. We're so focused on the love of the craft that we get lost in it, and we love doing it. And we're not cutthroat, and we don't have that kind of ambition. We have a different kind of ambition. But there's this whole world, especially as soon as you're lucky enough to have success,
Yeah.
that are very cutthroat
Soon
and
as you
very
start making money.
ambitious. And
No,
for
ništa,
whatever
ništa.
reason, we keep
Pokupljeno već.
giving ourselves
Neko je
to them.
pokupio i ostavio i po zombije
And,
žive.
we
Idemo
need to
dalje,
stop
jebije.
giving ourselves.
This is a very good point. I think that a lot of companies, they expand very fast whenever they have success because they want to multiply that success and be even more successful and make even more cool stuff. But I think sometimes in doing so, they end up basically making a deal with the devil where they're locked into making a huge amount of money, and now they have to do things with
Ali,
their
ajde, skoči
games
tamo.
that are consumer unfriendly or player unfriendly in order to meet those those deadlines in order to meet those payments and, like payroll, basically.
Warcraft, when we made it, there was no CFO at Blizzard. You don't need a CFO to make World of Warcraft. The artists, engineers, designers, producers, and an audio team.
You don't need to bring in, just because you're making a lot of money, it doesn't mean you need to now start adulting by bringing in a CFO.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can figure it out.
And there are great finance guys. Like, I've worked with finance guys who get it and get out of the way and respect and they're gamers and they sort of understand, but like, I wish developers would understand their own value more and stop handing the golden goose to people who don't deserve it.
Honestly. Like, I think this is what happens with a lot of companies where somebody takes over that doesn't really understand the actual minutia of the job, and then it just basically declines over time. He's totally right about that. Govan Goose, what's that? The ability to create a good product regularly on a regular basis.
How painful was it?
Mislim da je tu još neki noob.
It broke me.
Puca
I
tamo je
bet.
nego.
I
I'd be
think
sad.
after you've been at a place like Blizzard, which I love Blizzard to this day, I have nothing but warm, fond memories. There's those moments where you're like, I wish that hadn't happened, but on the whole, that place is mecca for game development. And, everything I have
Yeah.
due to Blizzard. They provided for me and my family, made me the person I am. So
evo ga,
separating from
specijalac.
Blizzard was one of the most painful things. And I was very sad when I resigned, and I didn't realize how broken I was until recently. Like the morning grieving I had gone through of like, I think I'm a little fucked in the head for not being there, and how could I give that up? How could I not do it? It was
Nazo.
really painful.
O jebem ti
I think
sunce,
that
ovo
that
nije
also,
nikako
like, it's
dobro.
like a toxic environment where I think creative people become even more toxic, and it basically like turns their creativity against themselves. I think that happens very often as well. Why did he resign? Because he was being put, like, he was basically saying, like, you have to meet these player numbers or we're going to fire 1,000 people. Like, these, like, crazy, dramatic, extreme punishments for him not being able to deliver ever-increasing numbers of player count or revenue or something like that. That's the reason.
Can we just speak
Seems
to...
that way.
I don't know. I don't think we can give enough love to Blizzard. It's a legendary company.
Ajde, otvori je.
For me personally, for everybody, millions of people play some of the greatest games ever. Warcraft, Starcraft universe,
Ovo
Diablo,
zelena.
WoW, Overwatch.
A?
Dođe,
Put me
Siva
up
ne
as
mogu je
a
otvoriti.
legendary game company. Just looking back.
Ovdje
at the
kod
whole-
mene, nadam da se ne mogu da otvorim ja.
The start is Mike.
Ako bi ja
Howard,
zaključao,
Frank.
stavio.
It was
Pa nemam pojma.
run by 3 gamers.
Vidio ovoga Residenta tvoga.
They were
Ide ono drugu
all
tamo
3 of them
otvori.
programmers. They,
Evo ja
they
može.
made the games before they just ran
Daj
the
tamo ono
company.
otvori.
So they knew.
That's the reason why I wouldn't want to run a game
Idemo
company. It's
nazad.
because I don't make games. How can you possibly run a company about making games if you've never made games? Like, I'm a very big believer in the person with a leadership position has to have a strong understanding of the subject matter. They
what
have
each
to
of
get
us
it.
as developers
don't get it, they're
beneath
gonna have
them
big
were going
problems.
through, and they protected us.
Mhm.
They shielded us from all of the nonsense. And even when they would align with a business person, they had
Yeah.
a COO in the early days named Paul Sams. And Paul protected us. You know, they just they found great people who
Yeah.
got it. The company when I joined was like 95% developers and like 5% operations.
Dođem za
It's-
minut.
When I left,
Ajde,
it
samo
Now
malo.
it's like the
know,
opposite almost, probably.
50-50, and that's like
Yeah,
a 4,500
Jesus Christ.
person company.
The fuck do you need half those people that aren't even developers there? What the fuck are you doing? Video games? Wait, we're supposed to make video games here? Oh!
That
What do you mean?
love of the games and the respect and good treatment for game developers really turned it into the place that it was. Just the commitment to excellence, the high quality bar, and then finding these passionate people like Chris Metzen
Yeah.
or Sam
Remember him?
Didier. They were like the visionaries of early Blizzard, Alan Adham, of just these worlds that we're still making and we're still playing in today. It was infectious and it was inspirational, and you wore the Blizzard blue with an esprit de corps. Like, you felt proud to be part of it. And
Working at Blizzard was like a huge dream job for anybody that was involved with game dev. And I think it really was until, like, I don't know, probably the sexual assault scandal or abuse scandal or harassment or whatever you want to call it. Like that, until that happened, I feel like Blizzard definitely had like a huge amount of notoriety to it. And this is like especially like in 2011, dude, anybody getting into gaming wanted to work at Blizzard. Like Blizzard was the place to be. Absolutely.
felt like you had made it to be there.
Got milk,
and,
yeah, not so good, huh?
Everything you did wanting to respect and honor those who had come before you. I know it
Yeah.
sounds almost cheesy saying it that way, but
It's
it
not.
really had that sense
Yeah.
of reverence. Like, you knew you were part of something special. You didn't take it for granted.
Yeah, that's the sense. Reading everything, that's the sense
I think
got.
that's like what he's saying is there's a little bit more to that, I think, too. Like, at least that I would say is that I think that a lot of people, whenever they get involved with media now, they treat it as if it's like their turn to change it. And I think that they view
I'm-
it as like they have control
Done
over
it well,
it
level.
rather than
Huh?
they are the stewards of it.
Done 2
And
level
like
stato.
basically,
No,
like
ti
instead of
ovaj.
looking at it as like
Mm,
it's
ja, ja.
now your responsibility to maintain this piece
Ja,
of
ja.
media in a way that, you know, upholds the values that people want to see. It more
Ja, ja, no,
is now it's my turn to be able to do what I want with it. And it's like you just think about like that mentality shift is like 180 degrees, completely different. And like you see, it's like Star
Demo.
Trek. Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, how many times like
5
have you
ljudi
guys
samo ima
noticed, like,
danas.
whenever somebody gets like a
Neko je već
director
pobio.
or, you know, like a filmmaker or somebody that's creative gets in control of something, and it's such an obvious difference whenever somebody tries to make another really good version of something versus when somebody tries to do their version of it. And I think that's the problem.
But everybody that was a part of it, that truly,
huge
truly,
issue.
truly honored that time. Just to
Like Witcher.
just to
Yeah,
take a
exactly,
small
Witcher.
slice. What were some of
Vidi ovamo, što već je očistio.
you give so much love to so many people on the team. I gotta ask you about this, who I would, by the way, love to do a podcast with at some point. What were the brainstorming sessions room like? It seems like those are pretty.
Pretty nice guy. Yeah.
They
Idemo
were the
ovamo,
best.
veliku
Like,
sljedeću ovamo.
you could walk into a room. Like, the way I would work with Chris is early on when I was more junior, it was just sort of getting creative direction from him. Hey,
Yeah.
Chris, I'm about to work on this film called
Ti
Westfall.
dole, ba, frajer.
What are
Nemoj
your
skakati kroz
ideas?
prozor.
You know, how could I capture them in gameplay? Well, that won't quite work. How about like this? It was more like
Yeah.
that.
That's smart.
Later on, like I still remember the first discussion I ever had with Chris about Wrath of the Lich King.
Which,
I went
by
up,
the way, you know what that implies? That conversation implies? It implies that they basically gave him autonomy to make decisions for himself.
Ok, sam kup.
Which is like that's huge inside of a company, especially whenever you have like so many moving pieces. You have to be able to do that. If you can't do that, it's gonna fall apart.
to his office, like, hey, we're finally
No,
doing it.
det
We're
var
doing the Northrend expansion.
Yeah.
You know, what excites you about Northrend?
Try to go back
ovo
for
je
insurance. Yeah, exactly.
Tissue
That's all you had to
regeneration
say.
materijal, nepotreban.
And he would draw a map, and he'd start pulling up old, like, Warcraft
Warcraft
2,
2, yeah.
Warcraft 1
The manual,
manuals,
yeah.
and, you know, showing you, like, pictures Sammy had drawn, and, like,
So he
maps.
did the same thing that I've done on my stream, except for he's the one that actually drew them.
And all of it, he
Fucking
would
based.
just go on for an hour, and then I would sort of digest it and listen, taking
I still have
constant
'em.
notes, photographing his whiteboards all the time, and then I go back and start to put those
Sportska,
into design
ženska.
flow. Like, what's a zone? What's a dungeon? What could be cool? What should come first?
Yeah.
What should come last? You know, Lich King, for example, we wanted to try a very specific design to counter a problem we had in Burning Crusade, which is everybody entered through the Dark Portal through Hellfire Peninsula.
I remember this. This was so bad. And that they even explained this very clearly. They said Howling Fjord and Borean Tundra are on the opposite sides for a reason. I remember this so well.
All the server programmers hate you because everybody loads in the same time. Lich King, we split
Why
them
do
up
you think Hydro and Bashir were the same way?
for better player flow. Plus, it's
Yep.
more interesting. The more choice you have, Sid
Massive.
Meier's
gore
games
ostala
are a
jedna.
series of interesting choices. So
Sad sam bio gore, boje dan.
Ma koje jebe, nemoj
that
ostavi je,
was
neki
the flow
ostane,
with
ko je
Chris,
šiša.
and
Ide im je
so
sad.
often we would just like, okay, in that first
Ja
game,
idem
we had a
sljedeću
zone
čistiti
called
onda.
Grizzly Hills on the board. Well, I don't know anything about Grizzly Hills.
Koliko ti je ostalo gemova?
Oh, I
Hey
like that.
Chris, talk about Grizzly Hills.
Ja,
This is my one. Third zones.
If you didn't interrupt him, he'd just go for an hour. and you
370.
have no idea how
Oh,
much of
te
it, like,
sunce.
you pre-thought
Jesi išta
about or had
zaradio na onome
existed in
đavlu ili
previous
nisi?
lore,
It's just riffing.
and how much
Just
of it
making
Tek
it
Nisam.
Na exchange.
on the
Yep.
spot. He's just that charismatic and captivating.
Create
Nisam
these
stavljao ni-
worlds and be able to
Yeah.
brainstorm through them.
Pojedoše mi ovu bičar.
As a consumer of those worlds, I don't take it for granted. Because they're incredible, but like you're scratching. Like you're looking at a blank sheet of paper.
A odoše mu
and
nogice.
they're coming up.
My job, as I
The good
saw it
days,
working
yeah.
with Chris,
Dobro, dobro,
was I
rekao
had to-
370
on World of
gemova,
Warcraft
znači sad skupiš još
specifically working with Chris,
1200 i kupiš sebi peta da kupi.
into gameplay of what Chris wanted, how to get it to play like how Chris
That's it.
wanted. So
Hm?
my favorite
Pa
stories
ima
we're
i to
working on.
svoje.
See, like that's the kind of responsibility and relationship that like two people have to have
Imam tebi
absolute trust
cviku.
and respect for
I
each
ponekad
other for it to work. Because like if you have the
Ponekad
person, like,
onoga
'cause
nuba,
you have
jeli,
such a
Nikol.
different skill set
Najvećeg
than
nuba.
another person,
Najvećeg
and
nuba.
Od svih nubo.
vice versa, you just have to understand and like accept that this person is also a top performer.
Pa
in
dej,
the war.
dosta smo mi isto.
Nobody is like the winner or the loser, and it's just about figuring out how to do it the right way. You know, that's crazy.
Burning
That was
Crusade,
partnership, yeah, exactly.
and we're
Trust
in
the
this
process, yeah.
meeting, and Chris is like, he's the gentlest, sweetest guy, but because he carries himself with such confidence, and everybody's in awe of him, the junior developers get kind of intimidated by him. So we're in this
Makes
meeting,
sense.
and we're talking about Silver Moon City because we're
Yeah.
introducing the Blood Elves, and Chris is like, in Silver Moon City, it's got the tallest fucking tower in all of Azeroth. I mean, it is the tallest thing. You know, it's mind-blowing. The
I didn't know
awe of
that.
it. Only the Blood Elves can build it.
Makes
Fast
sense.
forward like 2 weeks later, I'm walking through the hall,
City.
and I see a bunch of level designers and artists all like crowded on the screen. And on the screen, they've dragged Blackrock Mountain and Karazhan
No, they're not comparing, are they?
and the Stormwind Cathedral.
They're comparing.
I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And they're like, well, Chris said that the
It's the
Silver Moon
tallest point.
Tower had to be the
Has to be
tallest
the-
thing in World of Warcraft.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Blackrock Mountain is like a natural form.
See, the-
And so we're
I'll let it go,
measuring
I'll let it go.
how tall all of these other things are
Yes.
so we can make the tower taller.
See, that's something.
Ti dobio na ljubičast.
The kind of person that does that,
Da. Nisam.
there's a special kind of person that does that. And that kind of person is very special.
Jasno.
Yes.
It's passionate.
Guys.
Yep.
Dobit ću ja jednog dana.
Chris doesn't know how tall the
Yeah.
burning steps,
To sve popio.
you
ono.
know,
Jesam, jesam.
the cathedral and
Prva
Stormwind
kuća
is.
idemo.
Ima i ovaj šator, vam s druge strane.
Just
Pa
make the
nema
tower
ništa tu.
really fucking tall. You don't need to measure. Oh, okay. That's
Oh.
okay? Like, are you willing to give me to be... I'm like, I'm
Gledam
willing to
ti
take the
sunce.
heat on this one.
Yeah.
Respectable.
It's just a feeling. It's
Yeah.
a vibe.
It's a vibe.
Yeah.
Ja, sunce.
And I also just personally have to give all the love in the world for the current Diablo 4 team because I've spent
Come on, Lex, bro. Why can't you just play PoE like a normal person?
Why the
What
fuck?
are you doing, man? Like,
Ja,
come
ali nije moje.
on.
Ja
What
ga
is
ubio,
wrong
nije
with
moje.
you?
most recently out of the
Ah,
Blizzard,
ajmo
I've
nazad,
spent
iz
a
Tovarce.
huge amount of time in Diablo, and they've created some, and it's not just the loot.
Ah.
All right, it's the whole experience, the art, everything together,
Look, it's not a bad game, but I can't, dude.
and the season they've
Dude.
created.
Malo sad na
created
drugu
really
stranu
wonderful
otići.
world, so
He's
I can-
glazing.
I could
get
see,
it.
I
I
could
get it.
feel-
A pa dobio sam ja
how much
neki
effort goes into that.
kitchen ljubičasti
Fair
ranije
question, man.
izgleda.
And I think
Yeah.
Diablo 4 in like modern times is one of the best worlds that have built, and they
Ne dica
know
Rom
they
Blueprint.
understand Diablo players. Like that community is so
Meni je samo
hard
novčić
and
ovaj
so
bitan, znači
demanding, and,
ostalo šta god dobio,
Um,
dobro
that
dobio.
that team is amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of richness. It's like this is really. I mean, I don't know how often you get that, but it's really the perfect Diablo game. They've really like evolved a lot, grew a lot. So there's this whole mathematical.
Gledam sad
I will
Volti i tamo
tell you
neko
that-
kopa. Ali ne veze,
Like,
idemo.
I'll tell you that definitely Diablo 3 is like much better than Diablo, or sorry, Diablo 4 is much better than Diablo 3. I mean, he's right about that. I just don't really think it's. I could talk about Diablo 4 and how bad it is for like 3 hours. I'm just gonna skip it. Like, I think PoE 2. is
Čovjek
way,
ostaje
way
kutiju sa
better.
jednim zelenim.
It's just better in every single way. It's not even.
Najbolje.
Just trying to do that.
Ma depala, znači.
Something numbers everywhere, and it's all balanced really masterfully. And of course, you have to come up with new
Tvorio
concepts.
se unutra, pa ko izađe, izašao je.
Figure out ways
Tako
to
je.
do that, so, and
Znači, kad počeo da kupim, onda dole je ona otvorila ovaj.
Znaš,
vrata.
ovu
They're
kuću
a
ispred.
great
Ma
live
idem,
team.
idem.
Yeah.
And for me personally, like I
Vidim,
said, the
vidim.
co-op, the couch co-op experience has been really like.
Samo prođemo
That
pored
aspect
ove,
of
idemo
it
do
is
sljedeće,
really
ako ima
awesome.
3-3,
It's
ima
one of the
3-3.
greatest games,
Evo,
in
taman
recent
su
history.
sljedeći su počeli onaj da se
One of the
spavnaju.
things I wanted to mention, because this is
Look, I guess if you're a casual player, Diablo 4 is not bad. It's not.
Neko
it's
već
not
puca
look,
tu, da.
Diablo 4 is not a horrible game. It's not a horrible game. I just like as a more hardcore player, like I just. What I thought about playing Diablo 4 again.
Gdje ona je ovdje? Nemoj dirati misticu.
Yeah.
you allegedly shared this video giving advice, and people should go watch this clip. But if I
Why
may
you
read
never
it,
played to the gallery?
Ma
Chloe says,
kupi.
never play to the gallery. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that.
Streamers are the same way. They are. They're the
Oh,
exact
yeah.
fucking same.
And
Zeleni.
the other thing I would say is if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go to the area that you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth. And when you don't feel that
Idem ja sa
you're
riječ u
quite
kući.
touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you are just about in a place to do something exciting. After leaving Blizzard, you told me that you tried to take some time off.
Yeah.
How did
Sa
that
riječ
work
u
out for
kući.
you?
Not so well. My wife.
I
was-
couldn't imagine myself taking a lot of time off. Like, give me 1 second. But yeah, something relax. Something exciting. I want you to relax. I'm not talking about myself. I'm back. Relax. Calm down. Good. It's okay. All right.
Wonderful. Told me I needed to take at least a year off, and
A
just,
year.
you know, I've been going really hard. I'd gone 19
Zaleđata,
years, barely taken vacation.
storica.
And I let Blizzard consume me. And, you know, I was crushed by leaving. I loved the place. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I was pulling weeds in the backyard.
Literally, gardening.
Yeah, well, she won't let me
Damn. They had him down bad.
garden in the
Preko
garden
puta.
because that's hers, but I'm allowed to pull the weeds.
Right.
So
So you're the Animal Crossing villager? That's great.
I got very good at that. I was very proficient.
Wow.
And then of all
Yeah,
things, I
man.
cracked out on
Yeah.
Call of Duty Black Ops Cold
Ono je kočić.
War, and I
Ja, ja.
unlocked
Ma
Dark
isto idemo,
Matter
ono.
Ultra, which I'd never, that's like a
Oh.
crazy achievement to do in
Ima
that
ova
game.
kampovi, znači
So I
u
did
njih.
that, and then I couldn't help it. Like, it's how I'm programmed. It was like, at this point, it's late spring, early summer, and I'm just sitting in the backyard. I started writing with Notepad about here's the game I want to make. And And it was so terrifying because for 19 years I had worked with the greatest developers, I thought, in the industry.
Yeah.
And
Dođi
you know,
ćemo.
there'd be
A, ima
moments
ovaj
where
jedan.
it's like, okay, I want to do like a game world map.
Crkni
Like,
Vuk.
hey, Aaron, you're amazing at making game world maps. Like, you do that, and you know, I need some story hooks. Hey, Chris, what do you think would be cool here? Like, it,
Yep.
you know, it's so collaborative, and I was surrounded by the best of the best, and there I was by myself,
Ovaj tvoj je crkvo.
and I was out there again.
Tiho,
And
ciganine.
I loved it. I
Jej.
brought all the joy of game making. I thought games
Šta je
were
ovdje
all
just
ostalo?
fun
cheat.
to
Dva
make
još.
because it was only
Like,
Evo
about
me, bre.
business,
Yeah, corpo shit.
and somebody's asking me for unreasonable amounts of money and unreasonable amounts of time.
Vidim
Nisam
igra
ga
se
napustio.
že
And I had
Ma
forgotten
mi
the
ubišmo
pure
Vuk, te za
joy of
ti
the
još
craft
nije
of
izašao.
making games.
This is
Ali
the
nisam
reason
ni
why I
neću,
think
Ja.
indie
još.
games are outperforming AAA too. Is because
A ne, a sad je kod nas
there's a
dupla
passion to it
guža
that I think
zbog Bajrama.
really, you know,
Ajoj.
it's kind of like it's like 90% like
Nije
kind
to
of the
nikako
actual
u redu.
work, but then like that 10% passion kind of ends up tying everything together.
Ja ne znam zašto svi čekaju zadnji dan da idu u prodavnicu kupiti, ne znam šta ide.
I was designing
Pa zato, da si ti pitao zašto to treba tako.
Unreal and
Zato što
Pa
jučer
kako
nisam
to,
stigao.
brate?
help me make games, whatever.
Pa
Blender.
kako to, brate?
I had no right to be doing any of that, and it just felt so amazing.
Šta
to
se
do.
kao,
Ježi
zato što
bit
juče...
And I
Čarko.
sort of realized
Zato što do jučer nije znao šta im treba.
Da.
One, I never want to work for
Jučer je pravili
someone.
spisak, danas
I
kup...
never want to
Danas, sutra, to je kao.
create something and then have somebody take my baby away from
Ništa to, cvika nije i kod nas isti taj
Really
hep.
hard
Isti
when
đavo.
that happens.
Ako je Božić, ako je Vaskrs, ako je Slava,
Bilo što.
danas idemo, a sutra ćemo
Let
slaviti.
something go that
Šta
you
god da je.
created.
Nikako 3-4 dana, 5 dana.
Pa znam,
ranije.
ako, pa isto mi je, brate. Pa i za Bajram i za Božić mi je isto, brate, i uvek je isto.
Pa ja.
Programming
Pa, brate, svaki tržni centar, ja, brate, ne radi. Ja mislim, ono,
not about the bullshit of the
jer ne radi, dođi se prazni. Brate,
Da.
ako je Božić,
games
ne
industry.
radi.
I'm not interested in the business of
Brate,
games.
to bude...
Exactly.
Not interested
Bož.
in the entertainment
Pa
industry.
joj.
Exactly, especially the entertainment industry.
Urnebes.
Tako, ja
Klejmorica.
sam ugroženiji, brate, ne ovako da tebi nešto kažem, ja sam ugroženiji, brate.
People that are too
Yes.
ugly to be actors.
Ti neš Bajrama,
That want to take their theater
tebi nije
projects,
spica za Bajram,
turn them into a
nije
video
spica za
game.
Božić.
Please stop. Stop
Joj,
it.
ajmo nazad.
It has to stop.
A znaš kako se to poklopi vam?
Just
Vama sve. Dijaspora, Nova godina,
making
Božići, brat.
stuff
Ja
that we're
znam,
gonna
pa to je
play
sve.
together.
Znaš,
They think they're Kojima. They
Yeah.
are.
Allah.
A
Kroz
svugdje,
kolone,
my
ma skoro
I
isto
call him
svugdje.
a
Failed art
development
students, yeah.
soulmate. There's a
On nije skoro već
programmer
isto.
named Tim Ford.
Ma samo se drugačije grad zove,
reached out,
jebo ga
he's
ti
like,
sve
Hey,
isto
man,
ostalo.
he was like a
Whatever.
associate tech director on Overwatch at the time. He's like,
A
"Yeah,
neće
I
mi
don't think I
iđe
can do this
dijaspora, brate,
anymore.
znaš,
It's just
dođe,
not like
banti
it
se,
was,
kome to stane nasred puta
you
ljubi,
know,
gdje,
I just
brate,
handed
gdje
him my
si
notice,
došao, gdje je kume došao od tamo,
you know.
aj sad kaf hoćeš
Well,
sili
if
moji,
you want to do
bježi
something
cesti
together,
i
like,
jebu ti, mati.
fuck it, let's take a stab.
Nije se ljubav vili jebo ga, ti nemoj takav biti.
Da.
And
Joj,
Tim
brate,
came over
odmah,
to my house.
ko u zombijima, ono, u golf palcu treba
Before that,
ponijeti.
he says,
Odmah
"My
treba
last day's on
roknuti u
Friday."
glavu, znači. Šta smo rekli,
And,
ovaj,
my
dole se
exit interview is
ubijaju,
at, like,
znači,
1
na onu
o'clock.
tamo stranu, ajmo na
I'm
ovu.
gonna be over at your house at like 2 o'clock that
Samo da
afternoon.
opravimo ovo.
And I'm like,
Samo ti opravljaj.
don't you think you should take some time off, Tim? You know,
Okay.
before whatever's next.
So
for
he
you.
just
Take a
wanted to
month
leave.
off. You know,
Yeah.
Meg, his wife, will appreciate it. You
Uh-huh.
know, just go for a week in the garden for a while.
This, yeah, bro. Like,
And he's like, I'm a programmer. All I'm gonna do is program for a month if I take a month off. I might
I onda
just
ovi
start
pješaci,
programming
pješaci,
fun
to iskače kod crndača, va.
games. It was so awesome when he said that.
bro, like that is.
Stani,
a
pogledaj,
guy
gled malo, brate.
side, bro. Like,
Te,
damn.
ok je zebra, ja razumijem da je zebra, ali razumiješ ti da ja ne mogu stati.
Pitched him this idea for a game, and I pitched him,
game.
let's start a company.
It's a real G, yeah.
And that was it. Like, that was the birth of us making a studio.
Now, meanwhile, as far as the outside world is
Jo,
concerned.
evo ga, jel, zguram
He's
se s ovim
disappeared off the
likom.
face of the earth.
Smart.
So you were actually
Really smart.
Idem ja odmah gore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I needed to be away from the
I
world.
ovaj
I
otišao
needed
isto.
to not have. I wanted to not get attention from anyone. I needed to not read my name on Reddit or, you know,
Fucking exactly.
any internet site. I wanted to not come up. Let some other. Jeff
Evo ovdje ne
Kaplan
mogu je da
bubble the
otvorim
top
ovaj
of the
deo, ovdje kod mene
Google,
otvori
you know,
ovaj je.
search list.
You know,
What
our-
studio? So he's making a game called Legends of California. I think that's what it's called. And if you can believe it or not, it's actually
Ja
not
namesti.
about an ancient
Ne možeš da
department
otvoriš
trying
niti,
to
jel?
figure out how many genders there are. It's a
Sad bi ubio
Wild
ovu
West
svoju.
game. And it actually looks pretty good. And it's like a survival, kind of like a Wild West style game.
Pa da može.
And,
Čemu
I think it's being
čemu
published by
agresiva?
Haven, which is Mike Morhaime, the previous
Ma
president
joj.
and original owner and founder of Blizzard.
Stalo čeče na kutije ne mogu otvoriti.
Founders, you know, when he said Mike earlier, that
Pa
was
pomiri.
I think it's being published by Dream.
Reci
Ne,
mi da li biti ljubazna se malo pomiri.
Whenever it got announced, so
Ništa
I'm
to.
assuming it's under the same,
Gdje je ova druga kutija?
the same umbrella. So yeah, that's it. Any trailers for it? Yeah, we looked at it a couple of days ago. Not PvP, so not like Rust. Oh, that's the first time I'm hearing that. Somebody said it's like Valhalla.
Ja sam
Maybe it is, I don't
mašina.
know. But it's like a survival style game like that.
Fabrike
Man,
automobila,
Diamond
primaš.
Class is going to be all over this conversation,
Yeah.
right?
Či
Oh,
boš.
yeah, well, there's yeah.
I ja
This
sam
one's
fak
gonna set
mašina.
back some time, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, I needed for none of that to happen. I just
Kaj ima
wanted to
kakvih
be able to let
posljedica što
people
voziš
know
onaj
some
sam u autu?
Blizzard
Nema.
and
Ti sam
Nema.
to.
Nikakvi više.
at that time, like as soon as it was announced that I was leaving Blizzard, like 60 people reached out to me. This was April of 2021, and investment money was nuts, both like the VC money.
I can get those,
People
dude.
investing, like I'm not even kidding you, like 5x what they do now. It's insane. Like the amount of money that they were throwing out then. Like this is how like a lot of those like esports organizations got so much money.
And
Crazy.
Volio bi
strategic
raditi ono
money
što
was
se mora voziti
crazy,
brzo, na
like,
primjer.
especially the Chinese
Hitna,
companies,
znaš,
because
ovo ono.
apparently
Nem,
they
pa
weren't
što ne traži
getting,
posle toga?
publishing numbers
Zato
in
što
China.
je školi, zato.
The whole economy
Kakve
was
škole?
crazy.
Treba ti vozačka je. Pa trebaš vozač biti tamo,
And
ne.
so just
on ne onaj
everybody was
hitni.
trying to throw money at me, which was a very good
That's nice.
position.
Pa ne moraš
to
imati
be
i
at.
državni, ja ne opisim gdje je
So
kategorija državni.
what Tim and I did was say,
Obraćanu školu.
we're not doing this for money,
Dobro.
but here's the
To
game
nešto
we wanna
postavili,
make,
brate.
and
Pa
it's
zar
gonna
ti je
take
to
this
teško
many
napraviti?
developers, and we think it's going to take this length
Kako
of
se
time,
ti?
and that means the budget is this, and we need.
A to bi
for
volio
any of those
probati,
people who
kontaš,
wanna
ono,
invest in
malo ga
us,
dada.
we gotta
Blici,
hit that
blici.
number, but after that,
Da
Za
uradiš
tad,
to
we're
naš...
gonna go for more money. It's not
Napraviš
an
to, ja
option
mislim.
to raise.
Ali ne
as
znam
high as
kontam
we
kako ti
can
je
go.
problem to
And
ovaj
that cuts
državni
out
način
a lot of
napraviti.
the traditional
Znam
investment
u
too.
školu, čovječ.
We're gonna optimize.
Pa
for
napravi,
control.
odeš tamo negdje nađeš, platiš i to je to.
Man, and
Eto,
that's
dobio
also-
sam nešto.
also, because, like,
Claymorca.
optimizing for control also means that you can control the trajectory up and down. I think that's a huge factor because a lot of people never consider that. They never think about the fact
Njega.
that, well, if
Ja,
you
Bog
do
te mazno,
this
pa
and then
napraviš
everything
papir,
kind
jevo
of
te
just
papir,
gets a lot
znači nađeš
worse,
negdje.
then how do you control
Gdje
that?
se ono
This is
može
Lex
platiti
Fridman's
to?
podcast with,
Širok.
Jeff Kaplan.
Pa,
Like, the whole
drugačije.
thing's 5 hours long. I didn't
A
plan on
eto.
watching the
Širok.
entire thing, but
Pa
I
znam,
wanted to
išao
give you
sam,
guys
pa,
a clip of it and look at a little
I?
bit of it because I
A
thought
šta
it
mi
was
nije ta
interesting.
škola trebala, pa nije mi to trebalo, brate. Pa nisam ja to uopće gađao. Pa to kažem onako, kroz ovu kuću, sad izbacim ono gore, onu sirenu, znaš. To.
Onda budi dostava jebi, a nema sirene, ali ima brzine.
I mean, that's the whole stream.
To.
Like, that's my entire fucking stream.
Ne znam fali
Ja-
sirena.
So I don't think I
Ne
would-
znam, ne znam.
meni sirena fali, samo sirena.
Debala, znači, to je sve glupost. Glupost, znači, samo nabaviš sebi ovaj papir. Možda te nekad budu provjeravali to, ali trebaš imati čovjeka koji će to omogućiti, onda je sve jedno ko šta provjerava.
Like, because Jeff Kaplan obviously was like one of the OGs, right? He's been one of the OGs for a long time, so I do respect him a lot. If you want to show Tiggle, for people that don't know, that's hilarious. Oh God, what is this? Can I pull this up? I haven't seen this. Oh, dude, this is the email he
Crkni.
sent to Blizzard that turned out to be his
Nek crkne
application
komši
to
krava.
be in World of Warcraft.
A nek
Crkni,
crkne
crkni
komšija
zombi.
kravicu, on te iskoristi.
Ma zombi nek crkni.
Yep.
Hajde Cigo tužan, ali Ciga kad kaže Cigo šta je bilo, ma umro mi čale. Pa jel to živa baba? Jes, pa napravi čale.
Ma na. Ja, veti sunce. To je to.
And then they ended up hiring him afterwards. But yeah, this is Jeff Kaplan from literally 30 years ago.
Dječka je Cigo, evo te pravo kos, jebo se pravo kos.
Okay, so this is by
Pa, pa.
a retarded chimp. This is him
No,
mauling at the
Claymorca.
EverQuest developers. Okay, I got it now. Right?
Hvala.
Actually beta
Eh,
test the
A
nazad.
možeš li,
fucking patch it live.
Šta može?
And please, for God's
pa na
sake,
primjer
put
sad ja
the
otvorim
overlay out
kutiju
for
i vidim
Dobro.
šta je u
you.
kutiji.
Charge you a
Dobro.
To mi se ne
that way.
sviđa.
And
Dobro.
look, you might
Ostavim
as well
tep.
pull your heads out of your
Pa
asses
zavisi.
while you're at it.
Mislim da možeš. A možda i ne možeš, ne znam. Vjerovatno ne možeš.
I ako se ovo obagne, spojiti ćeš preko telefona, brat.
Može.
Može.
Može, ovaj je spojio, brać, ja.
Da.
Da.
Potvrda.
Pa ja sam skinuo obona spojiti.
I lakše ti je ako ćeš kupovat nešto, možeš kupiti preko telefona lakše nego preko ovdje preko komputera. I to sam isprobao.
Aha, gdje to trošio pare, aha, mišću, mekinja.
Nema. Da vidiš da sada sam šljasti, Bog te mazo, znači prejak je.
Sad ću ja, bat. A da, brate, ima da meni.
Ajoj. Ja sam danas napravio Forge 7. level i napravio sebi crveno oružje.
Sad ću doći, samo malo da nešto radim.
Svo polako, kad god došao, dobro došao.
So we started to talk a little bit about phenomenology.
O, za 5 minuta sam tu, ma i manje.
And,
Ma idem ja, nastavljam dalje, ti kad dođeš, došao si.
Znači, ipak si napravio oružje, počeo praviti oružje, zajebano.
No, napravio sam onaj random kutiju i dobio sam zajebano oružje. A?
Dobro, dobro.
Dobio sam isti hekler što koristim.
Dobar, a joljač.
Crveni, znači 3
A ja,
stata.
They're also more focused on action than on statement or belief. Because here's something to think about. You can think about
Nadam ti se.
Znači ne da je...
You're trying to
Isti
understand
mi je
what someone
hekler kao ovaj moj što ja imam, samo što imam 3 substata i bolji su substatovi, mislim nisu, malo su bolji substatovi, ali imaš 3 substata a sve ostale skoro pa isto, znači damage i penetracija, znaš kako je. Kad nabaviš, znači novo oružje, crveno, svi imaju 17.000 penetracije.
Pa jebe, trolejbus.
Moš gazi ga jebu ti.
Pa već i od meni trolejbus.
Čini se.
A znaš da Sarajevo jedino ima selo sa trolejbusom?
Ne znam.
Čurakino selo. Tako da zove naselje ide trola.
Ja.
I kaže selo s trolejbusom.
Ništa, mora to da se u Google piše, da se mogu ljudi gledati ga.
Selo s trolejbusom. Ženska i muška odjed.
Now the existentialists believe action spoke louder
Gdje je
than
jedna ova?
words, and that if you were interested in belief, and even if you were interested in
A oci koji sad napadaju.
better to look at how someone acted than what they said. Now, one of the things that you might think with regards to Roger is that his psychotherapeutic practice is predicated on the idea that you should bring how you act into alignment with what you say you believe, so that there's no discontinuity in between your body
Zašto ti
that
ležiš?
your mind. And so that
Ko
there
ti je
are
noge odbilo?
Pa
paradoxes
možda glumi leđić, daj.
in the way that you manifest yourself in the world. So the concentration on action is one of the fundamental characteristics of existentialism. Another one is
Buraz proći kroz tebe, niješ ga, tu sam proći.
Prođi kroz
the
sebe.
insistence upon
Prođi kroz njega, jebate.
Nije kao
trauma
prošao.
and suffering as
Kume pravi gužu
of human
kompletnom
experience. So
gradu,
we could concentrate on
pa što
suffering.
to radi tuda
What's
i
life like to you,
ide ga
how do you
pusti, ne
experience
te
it?
pustio sine.
And we could say, well,
A
built
da je
into
moj
that
tata,
is
babo.
trouble. Built into that is chaos.
Ne
Built
bi
into that is
nije.
anxiety and pain and disease and then
Jebi ga.
you can fall prey to those things without there being something wrong with you. Now, if you pin down a psychoanalyst like Jung or Freud, they would of course admit that human misery is endemic to human experience, but Freud in particular tended to look for adult
E da, kaj se
psychopathology
čimo se posle od još
Ajde,
nešto.
riješi to pa dođi onda.
in pathological childhood experience. And
Evo ga,
he
Brutus.
at least implicitly claimed that if you hadn't experienced childhood trauma and you had developed properly, that what would happen is that you would end up healthy, roughly speaking, certainly mentally sound. But the existentialists, they don't really buy that perspective right from the beginning. They basically make a different claim, which is that life is so full of intrinsic misery, let's say, but suffering is a better way of thinking about it, suffering that manifests itself as a consequence of your intrinsic vulnerability, that psychopathology is built into the human experience. There's no real way of avoiding it, or at least there's no reason to look for extra causes. That might be a better way of thinking about it. And you'd be surprised how often that sort of observation is useful for clinical clients, for example, because one of the things that's quite characteristic about people, especially if they're introverted and they don't have very many friends, they don't have people to talk to, if they're suffering, maybe they're depressed or anxious, or they have some sets of strange symptoms like agoraphobia or obsessive compulsive disorder, one of the things they always presume that is that the fact that they're suffering in that manner means that there's something, not only something wrong with them, but something uniquely wrong with them, so that it's their fault and no one else is like them. And one of the things you do as a diagnostician, you'll hear a lot of rattling about how labeling is bad for people, and certainly mislabeling is bad for people, and even an accurate label can be a box that you can't get out of. But it's very, very frequently the case that if you diagnose someone, it's a relief to them like you can't believe. They come in to see you knowing that something isn't going properly, but they think, well, they're the only person facing it, and that means they're idiosyncratic, strange, in some incomprehensible way that no one else could possibly understand, and there's no way they could ever be better. And one of the things you do is point out to them is like, yeah, depression and anxiety doesn't really require any explanation, right? There's plenty of reason that everyone has sufficient justification for suicide. I think that's the point. Well, but the point is that if you look through the experiences of the typical person, unless they're very unfortunate, and they won't be that way forever, that's certainly the case, that they can point to traumatic experiences in their life, death and loss and illness and humiliation, and all those things that are sufficient to account for this state of quasi-permanent negative emotion. Now, often, as I said, people are depressed and anxious by nature. They assume that everyone else is the smiling face that you see on Facebook, and so that alienates them from themselves even more than certainly far more than necessary. And part of the psychoeducation that's going on is merely educating people to understand that a fair bit of misery is the norm, and that there's plenty of genuine reason for it. And so the existentialists basically start from that stance. It's like a fall of man stance in some sense,
Šta je, boss?
deeply rooted in the Western tradition, roughly speaking, is the idea that people are divorced
Na
from
koliko je?
paradisal state.
Ma, skinuo sam pola pete, bog te mazle, samo ja tučem.
That general
Ima jedan ovdje, čeka, pismenu molbu.
They believe it all the time. Frequently how people experience themselves. There's something wrong.
To ti stao ovo na ram.
Ha?
Jesi ti ovdje stao na ram?
Nisam. Samo ja sam stao sa druge strane. Manja je šansa da će mi nekako razbiti, upucat auto.
Giving into that misery or multiplying it doesn't seem to be.
Evo je zombie.
It doesn't seem to do anything but multiply. It doesn't seem to do anything but increase. You know, so if it's bad to begin with, you might say, well, increasing it is definitely. Increasing it is something that you have to regard as work. So how do you conduct yourself in the face of misery? Okay, so how do they present that? Well, this is from Pascal.
Obi mi je kurvo jevac, kanj...
Ma jebe.
Gdje Cvika otišao?
Odšao da se riješi sa poslom i onda će doći.
Swallowed up in the eternity before and behind it. The small space that I fill or even see engulfed in the infinite immensity of spaces which I know not. Me, I am afraid and wonder to see myself here rather than there. There's no reason why I should be here rather than there, but now rather than then. So that's an element of existential thinking that is shared with phenomenology called loneliness.
Udri njih, udri njih.
Originated, if I remember correctly. And what it means is it's an analysis of a certain characteristic of human experience, which is that, well, there was an immense span of time in which you could have been born, but you were born 20 years ago, and there was an immense span of time in the future that you could have been born, and you were born and you have exactly the characteristics that you have. And there's something tremendously arbitrary about that. It's as if you were thrown into experience, and that's what thrownness means. It's randomly placed in place and time, and there's something fundamentally irrational, meaning that there's no real way of understanding it. It's something you have to deal with. And you might say, well, why was I born poor, or why was I born
Jedna kutica,
less attractive
10
than I
erova.
might be, or why was I born less intelligent than I might be, or maybe why was I born to these terrible parents at this particular horrible moment in time? And in some sense, there's no answer to questions like that. It's just how it is.
Ništa, oživite ovu pa
and you
idemo
have to
dalje.
deal with it. So the
Pa ne, gdje men kut?
for the
Huh?
existentialists, how do you deal with that?
Gdje men kut?
Ne znam,
This is Walter Kaff.
Nis dobi ništa.
Rarely has
Uglavnom
the
padne
existential
pored
question
tebe.
been put more simply or beautifully. In this passage, we see first the profound realization of the contingency of human life, which the existentialists call thrownness. Second, we see Pascal
Ništa,
facing unflinchingly the question of being there, or
Nazad,
more accurately, being where.
vratim se, dobio sam 10 erova
We see
i
the
ništa
realization
drugo.
that you cannot take refuge in some superficial explanation of time and space, which Pascal, scientist that he was, could well know. And lastly, the deep shaking anxiety arising from this stark
Niko
awareness
ništa nije
of
crveno
existence
dobio.
in such a universe.
Just whatever.
There's a fairly well-developed line of social
Ja on
psychology.
zapali auto, meni nije uspio
terror
zapaliti.
management theory. The basic premise of terror management theory is that
Joj, bože.
human beings have belief systems, and what the belief systems do is serve to protect them against death anxiety. And that now I have that's derived from the work of Ernest Becker, by the way, who wrote a great book
Uće
called
ga
The Denial of
završiti, ne
Death.
brini se. Kad ga
His theories in the
ostaviš.
denial of death have been put to the test by the terror management theorists with, I would say, some success. But I think the theory is flawed because I don't believe that
Evo ga isto, evo došli ovamo. Hoćemo zapaliti ovome drugome koje.
attempting
Šta je došlo?
Ma nemam pojma šta je došlo.
communicate.
Charger.
It's more like
Taj.
terror at
Taj.
it's more like
Tu
terror
sam
of
gore izbušio.
isolated beings.
Hoćeš da ga završimo do
Da,
kraja?
popravio sam.
Java.
That you're mortal, that you have a border.
Da. Znači na onu tamo stranu idemo, pojavljuju se sad, da.
But also that during that time you're
Tamo gdje je tvoj
vulnerable to all sorts of
tahi.
things and all sorts of contingencies. One of which, of course, is death, but it's by no means the only one that is horrifying. I think you can certainly make a case, like the existentialists do, that the mere fact that you're limited in the face of infinite complexity is also a primary existential problem. It's a problem that human beings have been dealing with ever since they started to understand. They started to make sense of concepts that were beyond their immediate experience. No.
Sve ja idemo u malu kućicu.
Millions of years ago, or tens of millions of years ago, when our ancestors lived in trees, you could be sure that they were frightened of what surrounded them. They were frightened of, when they were little, they were frightened of birds that might pick them out of a tree, and they were afraid of cats that might climb the tree and eat them. They were afraid of snakes that would come slithering along and bite them. And they existed in a space that was safe, surrounded by a space that
Aha,
wasn't
pokupim
safe,
se
that was
bijeli,
full
a
of
tebi dam
predatory
zeleni ovaj.
predatory entities. And those were primarily birds of prey and snakes or other reptiles. And then what seemed to have happened as we evolved, the way we construed the world, you can think of the world as a safe place surrounded by the possibility of predation, but you can also think of the world as the known surrounded by the unknown. It's the same idea, except put up one level of abstraction. And the unknown has the same relationship to us in some sense that the territory of predators has relationship to us. And we use the same circuitry to represent the absolute unknown that we used so many relationships to represent predators. Now, it's more complicated for human beings because, first of all, we're not just prey animals, we're also predators. So, we're not only targets, but we're the thing that makes other things targets. And we're also something that isn't only shaking in the face of the unknown because of its predatory element, but something that can explore the unknown and garner something of value as a consequence. And so there's this very paradoxical wiring, you might say, that the unknown is partly terror, and that's the prepotent element of the unknown. So negative emotion for human beings is more powerful than positive emotion is sort of dose for dose. And I think that's because you can be completely and utterly dead, but you can only be so much happier. And so it makes much more sense
Nemoj se zbagovati,
towards sensitivity to negative emotion than it does to be tilted towards sensitivity to positive emotion. But it's also another one of those things that makes life rather intrinsically difficult because negative emotions are commonplace and they're powerful. And they need to be because otherwise you wander stupidly into something that would kill you. And it's better to be anxious than to be in pain or dead, even though it's not so good to be anxious. So for the existentialist, the fundamental quality of human existence is limitation in the face of incomprehensible complexity. And all of the things that stem from that. Existentialism is not a comprehensive philosophy or a way of life, but an endeavor to grasp reality. Existentialism is immersed in and arises directly out of man's anxiety, estrangement, and conflicts. This was written 60 years ago. So it was aimed at Western audiences at that point. If you go back 100 years, you could make the case, or perhaps a little longer than that, you could make the case that the parts of the world that weren't Western were still reasonably well ensconced in traditional belief systems. So those traditional belief systems provided an overarching canopy of meaning, that's one way of thinking about it, that was designed exactly or you could say cope with or deal with, depending on your perspective, that existential anxiety. It gave significance to everything. It gave meaning to everything. And those are religious systems, let's say, but they came crashing down in the West in the late 1800s
1800s, and then increasingly everywhere else in the world. So the point at which we are now in time, it isn't
Gdje je to
reasonable to
sada
really
tamo
consider
negdje?
this a pathology of the Western individual.
Ma nema,
Might
ne
even
spanja
be
se ništa ovdje.
the prime conflict that exists in
Tamo
the
na
world
kutija
right
iza,
now
i
between
kućica mala iza ima.
comprehensive and traditional religious systems and a modern viewpoint that has this existential angst built into it as part of its
Evo on ima kuću.
maybe it's the price you pay
Dolazim
for
po Slovi.
increased technological mastery and
Ovdje
awareness,
ša-
but it's a big price to pay. And the existentialists were concerned about that because they also believed that although the scientific method had given us immense technological power,
A, evo ovdje se
the
spavnovali.
worldview that came along with it, which you could say in some sense is incidental to the method, but it doesn't matter. The worldview that came along with it
Nema, ljudi napadaju ovdje
sufficiently
previše.
powerful and
Idu
objective
brzinski, skontali su isto koji mi, znači da je izrokaš u najbolje, najjednostavnije, najbrže što ide.
Number one of nihilism, which is really belief in nothing, and we'll talk about that more as we progress, or a proclivity towards rational totalitarianism, which would be, you might say, the extreme reaction to the threat of nihilism and the abandonment.
Evo te pa klikneš tamo i neće da prihvati.
Gdje klikneš?
Da skliknu. Inekciju.
Aha.
Huge ideological conflict in the substructure of Western intellectual thinking. People are, this is very hard on young people, they're caught in part between an emergent nihilism that seems to be implicit in a materialist worldview and the temptation of radical ideology.
Ja, ti imaš pušku.
And neither of those options, I would
Imaš pušku
say,
ovdje
is
unutra.
tenable. I mean, the nihilistic
Pušku,
option
aha.
leaves you with nothing, and that's not good. And that's an existential
Ali
realization.
ne možeš
ti da
in a sense,
pospiš.
too, because
Ej, da
if
mogu
your
pa
life
ne
is
bi ti rekao.
fundamentally
A.
problematic without you being
Bez
pathological,
veze.
just as
I onda
the
ću ja tebi
essence
to
of your
dati na
life,
kraju.
then
Eto.
you need something to
Jebem ti
defend yourself.
logiku
Against that,
retardirane
you can't
igre,
just have
znači.
nothing, because all it does is leave you with the suffering that's implicit in your experience. And then to swing to a totalitarian system means that you don't even exist. Once you've done that, everything you say can be predicted of a rational scheme that has an explanation for everything, but that's really good for nothing except destruction, because it's too vague and abstracted to be used to actually solve any concrete problems. So this is the situation of modern people as far as the existentialists are concerned. And the people that I'm talking to you about specifically, I'm going to talk to you about Nietzsche and Dostoevsky and Kierkegaard, and I picked those people who aren't psychologists except in the broader sense, because I don't think there is anybody who
Aj, benzinsku da
and
oslobodimo.
are existential psychotherapists, but I don't think that any of them do as good a job of explaining the problem as those people do, so you might as well get the information right from the source. Like psychoanalysis, existentialism seeks to utilize these very conflicts as avenues for the most profound self-understanding of man.
Šta je bilo zeleni onaj? Samo u glavu ga ubi. Samo u glavu. Samo u glavu.
Had an idea that was akin to the psychoanalytic idea of facing what
Just
you're
you.
afraid of. And that's a key concept in psychotherapy. There's not that many key concepts in psychotherapy. One might be that you enter into an honest relationship with your
Ništa
client.
nazad.
The second is that